Today, what we're going to talk about is uh, plane crashes, stabbings in Paris, a little bit of the history there, as well as elections that are going on. Very, very, very important stuff. Today on The Worldview. Hi, everybody. Chris Greco here for The Worldview for the next 30 minutes or so, could be 20, 25 minutes. If you last the first 10 minutes, you probably will last 20 minutes. So what we're going to do is very eclectic. This is a very eclectic show. We have different things thrown at you here. The reason was because I had the data show originally, but I just kind of like, enough of that. So what I do is I kind of bring data into The Worldview, which is so I get you an idea as to what's going on in the world. Interestingly enough, the U.S. is always worried about the U.S., and we'll get into that at the very, very end. So at the very, very end is kind of an opinion piece. It's so if you want to just, in fact, I'm going to say, look, this is part of the opinion piece. So if you want to say, I don't want to hear Chris's opinion, you can just kill at that point, and then go ahead and subscribe, right? So YouTube. So let's talk about what's happening in the world, right? The world is, they're saying about 50, I said in the last show, like 190, I was way off, like 50 countries that are currently undergoing elections in 2024, which is a lot. That's a lot of conflagration, within those countries, trying to figure out what's going on and everything else. We already have the situation in Argentina where Malay is trying to figure out what's going on. He's trying to put the whole country of Argentina on this attrition type diet aspect of, let's stop spending, let's stop doing that stuff. And people are just rioting, having all kind of issues with everything else. Because of course, people, once you give people something, you got to keep giving it to them. It's just the way that, and I hate to say it, but that's the way that governments keep you. They give you things, and then it's kind of like, oh yeah, keep voting for us, and then we'll keep giving you this stuff. So people sit there and say, well, gee, like free money. Hey, I'll vote for you. And that's, basically buying votes, right? I won't say specific politicians, because then everyone gets all pissed off about that. But basically, one party is not any more guilty of this than the other party, but some within both those parties are more guilty than everyone else within those parties. So I'll just leave it at that. So that's basically what's happened there. So let's just kick in right away to El Salvador. So El Salvador, I love BBC, so a lot of this stuff's from BBC. President's eyes re-election on back of grand crackdown. So basically what the El Salvador president did was, he wants to be reelected. And basically what he said was, hey, look, I'm going to make sure that, Nayib Bukele, and Bukele is a very, kind of a right-wing guy, right? But interestingly enough, he's the one that took all those soldiers and just, went into the prisons and whatever else, round up these gang people, gang guys, and just started to really crack down on the gangs. Well, here's a guy here from Pennsylvania who came down. Interestingly enough, guys from Pennsylvania, right? So he came back down to El Salvador, voting for this guy, Nayib Bukele, to keep things tight, which is good. That's a good thing, right? We want, that's so the better that El Salvador is fixing themselves, the less people that are going to want to come to the United States. So they're going to, they're not going to make that trip through Central America into Mexico and then through the United States, as maybe this individual did. Don't know the background on this guy. So basically, it's funny. He says, I've seen changes in the last 5 years and thought I'd make an effort to come and support him. 180 degree shift. I feel so safe here now. Good. That's a good thing. Good. Because, Vice President Harris was supposed to do that, go down to Central America and try to fix this thing. Whether or not she fixed it, I don't know. I don't know the background behind this thing, but it seems to me that this leader is taking the bull by the horns and trying to figure it all out. So interestingly enough, what's going on there. So that's an election. This election there. Paris knife attack. Let's talk about this real quick. February 3rd, right? Paris knife attack, 3 wounded. Interestingly enough, people said, oh, it's a knife attack. So are they going to start? They can start controlling knives. I know this is very cynical and it's very facetious, but really, seriously, if they're going to go from guns to knives, are they going to now control knives? How that works? You're going to have to register how that how that works, and sit there and say, well, Chris, come on, you're being ridiculous, right? Am I really? Because here we have May 13th, 2018. Chechnya-born Paris attacker kills 2 people. He's ended up getting shot and killed by the police. So this is 2018, and then voila, you have another one in 2020, December 3rd, 2023, Paris knife and hammer attack near Eiffel Tower. Again, Paris, and now we're talking about people getting killed here. So this is not something it just it just very rarely happens. Nope, sorry, December to February, that's only 2 months, and there's knife attacks on both things. Also, there's a hammer attack. So how is that going to work? How's that going to work, Macron? How's that going to work? How are you doing with that? I mean, how are things happening? So it's interesting how all these things, between the farmer protest and everything else, France is not looking all that great at this point in time, and yet they are supposedly the country that's supposed to run, supposed to be the head of Europe, right? Because they are a part of the European continent, and they want to make sure that they control things. They want to make sure that they are the superpower, right? France is a superpower. Yeah, okay, let's talk about that. Well, maybe we'll talk about that later on. In the meantime, what's happening in Somalia? Well, I got Somalia piracy. Here we have, this is 2 February. Hey, are Somali pirates coming back? Are the Somalia pirates coming back? Interestingly enough. So if that takes off, now all of a sudden we're going to have that along with the Houthi rebels, firing in the Red Sea. Then we're going to have to, and I'll tell you what, let's do this. People don't understand. People do not understand geography, and I'm sorry. I'm just going to throw that out there. Most people don't even know where the Horn of Africa is. They don't know where the Gulf of Aden is. They don't know where half this stuff is. So let me just show it to you, because I think this is important, because everyone talks about the Mideast as being this powder keg. Well, I'm sorry, but I disagree. The Mideast has always been a powder keg. It's always been somewhat destabilized type of area. But this right here, right? So what happens is, so you get through the Suez Canal, you come through the Red Sea, all of a sudden the Houthi rebels, lob some missiles and rockets at you, which of course the U.S. now, with our great and glorious president and Secretary of Defense, has stated, we're going to put them people down. Right? That's what we're going to do. And it's, fine, dandy. We'll see what happens. So they're firing there. Then it comes through here, right through Djibouti and Yemen, and then it goes through the Gulf of Aden, and then boom, they're hit by pirates right in this area here while they're trying to make their way along this coast, or they're trying to make their way along here. All of a sudden, these pirates coming out from the coast, and they're taking on these ships, just like they did in Captain Phillips. You watch the movie, all that stuff, and the intelligence people have all kind of data on these piracy aspects, what's going on there. So, I mean, this is what's going on with these areas. Now, a lot of people might say, yeah, but Chris, you didn't do anything when it comes to El Salvador. Well, let's go to El Salvador, right? So here we have South America. Here we have North America. And North America is this Central America? North America starts with Mexico, basically. I mean, that's what we're talking about. And then we have Central America. And here we have Belize, Guatemala, El Salvador, right here. Honduras is right here. So a lot of people don't even know where all this stuff exists, right? Here it is. Here's El Salvador right here. Small country, but look, you go through Guatemala, and all of a sudden, boom, you're in Mexico. So, I mean, they don't have to travel far to get to Mexico, but they look at the amount of, I mean, that's a lot of geography to get to the United States, and then bang, they're in Texas. So there's a lot of issues here when it comes to geography, and I think a lot of people don't understand how important that is, right? So Somalia, we talked about that. Let's talk about U.S. sanctions Iranian officials over cyber attacks on water plants. Folks, let me tell you something about cyber attacks, right? The relationship between cybersecurity, everybody wants to be a cybersecurity expert. Everybody wants to do that. Yes, I want to be a cybersecurity expert. Oh, it's very important. We're gonna do that. We're gonna have that cybersecurity stuff going on, whatever else. Let me tell you something about cybersecurity. they talk about Python and they talk about programming and how important it is and all this stuff. It's just basic lock your door. It's really honest to God as basic as that. Lock your door. I mean, just make sure. And social engineering is so readily available to cybersecurity people. Look, I'm not a programming expert, but I do understand cybersecurity, and I do understand how to get passwords. I can get passwords. I can get access to stuff just by talking to people, figuring out what they have, what they do. I remember the one time I walked into a guy's office, some vice president of a company. He was talking to me about how why do we have to change passwords? This is ridiculous. Change them every 30 days, 6 days, whatever it was. And I said, well, let me see if I can get your password in 3 tries. Will you change it every 90 days? And he says, sure. So I went and said, let's see, it's a Duffer, Duffer. And he looked at me and he goes, okay, I'll change it, like that. I mean, I had it on the first shot. Well, I just looked around the office. It's golf everything. Golf here, golf there. It's going to be Duffer, apron, eagle, birdie. It's going to be one of those things. There was no numbers. It was just a word. So I mean, those are the things that when you get good at social engineering, and I'm not good by any stretch of the imagination. When a person gets good at that, and they're willing to lie to you about who they are and what they represent and all these types of things, they scam you. They do it all the time in email. They do it all the time now in text. They scam you and they say, oh, we're from the UPS, and it's really easy to get into systems. And that's what happens. I mean, cyber attacks are not. I mean, everyone talks about cyber attacks as, whether it be denial of service, those types of things, DDNS, those areas. Yeah, that's fine, dandy. Basically you're destroying the entire network, so nobody gets to it. But a very simple phone call saying, hey, I'm the network engineer. This is what I have. I mean, I'm going to tell you that knucklehead that's sitting over in Moscow right now, that was very easy for him to do whatever needed to be done to get that information. And I hope he stays in Moscow for the rest of his life. I hope he has fun over there, because I don't want him back here in the United States. But that guy, they can call him whistleblower all he wants. He's a spy and he's a traitor. And people that sit back and they go, Chris, you're being awfully harsh. No, I'm not. I was in the security business for decades. And let me tell you something. I kept my end of the bargain on the security aspect. He did not. And I hope to God somewhere along the line, he goes to jail for a very, very, very long time. And no written books, no nothing. And that's, no consulting gigs with NSA or anything else like that. Just pure jail. You go to jail and you stay in jail for the rest of your life. I mean, you don't betray the country and sit there and call yourself a whistleblower. That's horse poop to me. But that's what cybersecurity is. Cybersecurity is all that. So the U.S. is sanctioning Iranian officials, fine and dandy. But the bottom line is this: whether you sanction them or not, they're still going to do what they're going to need to do. So I mean, sanctions. I'm going to sanction you. Yeah, that's going to prevent them. This one, interesting story. Italian junior culture minister has resigned. I mean, the accusation of laundering stolen goods, stealing a painting. He's alleged stealing painting in the capture of St. Peter. Right. I mean, it's really a shame. I mean, that's really bummer. I throw out that story because it's kind of like something's happening within the European area, and it's just such a shame that something like that would happen. Just thought I'd throw that in there. And then this one, small plane crash, mobile home in Florida. This is the United States. We're going to talk about plane crashes here in a second, about the data having to do with plane crashes, because I think it's interesting. I'll tell you something. The FAA, I get it. The FAA has a lot of responsibility. But I'll tell you something very sincerely, and a lot of pilots will agree with me. The FAA is out of control. I teach private pilot ground school. I'm an advanced ground instructor. I teach private pilot ground school. There is a chart that the FAA demands that and you use on the private pilot exam that is absolutely useless. This thing is the most useless chart ever. It's the hardest to use. It's a horrible chart to use, but yet you have to use it. And, I try to teach it. I try to show people how to use it. It's horrible. It's horrible. It's a takeoff distance chart, landing distance chart. I mean, these charts are horrible stuff. I mean, give me a formula any day of the week. Give me a formula, and the formula, you memorize the formula, and the formula works. Great, we can do it that way. But this is ridiculous. And the FAA has got to get their act together with this stuff. And the problem is you got so many general aviation people out there It really should not be flying airplanes. Really should not be flying airplanes that are flying airplanes, because they figured out the code, the FAA code of how to pass these tests, and it's really scary to do. And the flight examiners out there, I give them a lot of credit. They're trying to make sure that everybody does stuff to the standard by which they have done. But it's just scary. So we'll talk about this in a little bit. I mean, small plane crashed in a mobile home in Florida shortly after a pilot reported an engine failure. So, pilot, could it be pilot error? Could it be fuel starvation? So we'll talk about this. We'll talk about this towards the end of the show. Ukraine war, right? 2 French volunteers killed in Russian drone strike. Macron confirms. So 2 French volunteers in Ukraine killed in Russian drone strike. What are you going to do about this? What are you going to do about it, Macron? Okay, so it's like, hey, they were volunteers, and that's the way it goes. Seriously, so you're providing volunteers for Ukraine, but what are you doing in the way of any type of back end deals with Russia? I mean, I'm sorry, but it's really strange, these relationships that Macron has with all these different countries, including China, which really scares me. And that's a shame about those French volunteers, any volunteers. It's a shame that they died as a result of that. But I thought I'd throw that in there just for Ukraine war aspects. Sudan, civil war. UN receiving reports of starvation deaths in Sudan. I mean, so let's talk about Sudan for a second. Where is Sudan, right? So we're going to talk about Sudan. Sudan, we just talked about Africa. So where is Sudan? So Sudan, interestingly enough, right? So here's Egypt here. By the way, Egypt's in Africa. Africa, folks, not Middle East, North Africa. That's where it is. So don't see Egypt's in the Middle East. No, it's not. It's not in the Middle East. Nice try, though. So Egypt, right? Sudan's right here. South Sudan, which broke off 2012, I think it was. So they're down here. Sudan's here. Now, they still have port areas, which is good, right in this area. So that's good, right next to Eritrea. But look at the country. I mean, this is a lot of desert area. I mean, towards here, interestingly enough, South Sudan is all nice green, right? Would have been nice for Sudan to keep that, but they're having all kind of issues with people up in this area. They're having rebel activity up here. So there's all kind of problems in Sudan. And Sudan, look where it's near. Chad, problem there, and look what this is. This is right next to Libya. Libya's having its issues. So I mean, you have all kind of problems within Sudan. So I think it's worthwhile to talk about that, for no other reason than to talk about that. So I think that's important. China on civil war in Texas. Interestingly enough, mid escalating border standoff. Misinformation is spread in China that the Lone Star State has officially declared war to secede from the United States. This is what I'm talking about. This is, Chinese outlets have suggested events in Texas have led to deep divisions in the U.S., widening to a point where unrest has become a stark reality. Why? Because China wants that. China wants to show their people, look, United States, they're done, right? They're finished. They're going to end up having, all kind of problems, and this is what's happening. So this is the situation that's going on there. So here's how this misinformation stuff goes on and on and on. So that's it's very interesting how that's going on. Nigerian traditional monarch shot dead and wife kidnapped. This is Nigeria. Remember Nigeria, the place where Blinken just went. He just went to Nigeria talking about U.S. trade, right? Armed men have shot dead a traditional ruler, kidnapped his wife plus one other person. So so Nigeria is an area, Abuja and the rest of that is an area where it's a problem. It's been a problem, right? So this is something that is really scary from that standpoint. Ghana enforces controversial emissions levy, so they're gonna start charging people for carbon emissions, right, produced by their petrol. So that's it. So let's take a look and see where all these countries are, right? So Nigeria, right? Remember Niger is here, right? Nigeria is here, right? It's right here. There's Lagos, all that area. In fact, they just had a big, gigantic category in Jeopardy all about Lagos. So I thought that not Legos, not like the Lagos. So that's what that is. And here's Ghana right here. not Guyana. Guyana is in South America. Ghana is here. Don't get those mixed up. So this is Ghana, along these other small countries. Ivory Coast, whatever the French is, Côte d'Ivory or whatever it is. It's Ivory Coast, but of course French got to get involved with that. So that's it: Ghana, Togo, Benin, and then Nigeria in here. So then when we talk about that, then people can kind of get an idea as to what we're talking about. We talk about those areas. So that's what's happening here. So I mean, Ghana Revenue Authority has said levy aligns with government plans to promote the use of eco-friendly technology and green energy. Isn't that great? Fees range from $6, £4 for motorized tricycles to $24 for vehicles with a capacity of 3,000 cubic centimeters or higher. Interesting, right? So that's what's happening in Ghana. So everybody's going to go this green route. Oh, yay, yay us, And then last one is an explosion in Nairobi, Kenya. Kenya still wants to take troops and try to help out Haiti, right? So, I mean, that's what's happening there. So that's what's happening here. Gas fire behind blast in Kenya's cabinet, right? So that's what's happening there. With we talk about emissions levy, and then boom, national jars, right? So let me see if I can kill this. There we go. So that's what's happening here. Now, I want to talk about real quick. I want to talk about aircraft crashes. So what I did was I went in, I just took an NTSB. Now, it's different. A lot of people say, oh, FAA, why don't you go to FAA, Chris? Because that's aircraft. Now, NTSB is the governing body, National Transportation Safety Board, for aircraft accidents. They investigate. They have I think it's NTSB 830, the guidance on aircraft accidents. So what I did is I just went in and just, brought up all these areas. And I'll show you what I have. The first one is I have a number of accidents from 2012 to 2023. Now the problem is when you get to about 2022, the only thing they have is 2012 to 2021, and then 2022 and 2023. It may have more accidents because there was a difference in how accidents were categorized as accidents. So it could be incident, could be accident, that type of thing. So what I just want to show you is just what is going on from this standpoint here, and so this is what we're talking about is right here. I'm going to kill that. So this is the number of accidents that are happening here. As you can see, they fell down here and then kind of leveled out around 1,200, and then they went down, and then now they're coming back up again. So you take a look and see what happened between 2012 and 2013 that made that happen. And I just don't know. So I thought, well, I got to go in and figure out what is when we talk about this, what has happened from the standpoint of different FAA accidents. So I took a look at the accident count here, and then what I did was I took they have all kind of they have accidents here, all kind of subsections, aircraft. So different types of aircraft, findings, all the different findings. I just put did the filter, but I can take out the filter. Animal, birds, conducive to carburetor icing, humidity, pressure, all these different sections and subsections that they have on here. A lot of stuff: wind, runway, land, takeoff, taxi, surface. I mean, all these different things. So I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and just figure out some things. Let me see if I can. Here we go. So what I did was I took a subsection, just one subsection, and there's a lot of things that's in the subsection. There's, in fact, let's go ahead and move the chart to its own deal here. New sheet, so you have the entire chart. So this is the entire chart here. I mean, it's a lot of stuff in here, right? I mean, a lot of stuff. But what are the main ones? Well, let's see. So you have some of the biggest ones. Air inlet section cores. Oh, let's just go to sheet number 3. There it is. General here. General, some of the biggest ones, right? What are some of the other ones? Adequacy of policy. Interesting, right? Here's one. Aircraft control, which makes sense because a lot of things has to do with aircraft control, right? What's happening with the ailerons or the elevator or whatever it is that has to make that happen. Airspeed. Another airspeed too low, you're going to stall. So that's an airspeed issue. Altitude. Too low, too high. Angle of attack. Angle of attack is basically the wing is here. When you the angle of attack is the angle of attack of that wing, right? If it's too much angle of attack, what happens is that wing stops flying. It needs to have lift, so it's gonna go down, hence stall. Animal, birds, 190 of those. Attention. In other words, the attention that the pilot gives, very, very important. And this is what the brake, which I thought was very interesting. Braking. Climb rate makes sense. Angle of attack, rate of climb, angle of climb, all these things conducive to carburetor icing. There's an issue there, right? Because you're not paying attention. Crosswind, trying to land in a crosswind in a crosswind that is more than ability of the performance of the aircraft. Boom, you're dead, and there's a problem. Dark, interesting. Decision making, judgment. So that's part of the deal. I mean, when I teach ground school and everything else, aeronautical decision making, ADM, is part of the deal there, and that's part of what's going on. I mean, it's very, very important to be able to do that. Delayed action, directional control. The thing I was concerned about, and that I always felt was a problem, was I love this one: fence post. Okay, well, it could be a problem. Fuel. There's 1,000 accidents as a cause of fuel. Something about fuel, whether it be fuel starvation, fuel. I mean, this one, like fuel controlling system, fuel distribution. I mean, all these different things having to do with fuel indicator, fuel planning, very important. If you don't have enough fuel, you're gonna have to come down somewhere. So all these things come into play, and that's just one subcategory in this whole thing. So it takes it, I'm going to do some more analysis on this, but I want to show you that this is what we're talking about between 2012 and 2021 in just 9 years. So those are the things that have to do with data, and that's why it's very important to be able to make that work. So the last thing I want to bring up, minute and a half, is this Taylor Swift thing again. I'm sorry, this is my opinion. So boom, opinion piece starts. Jason Kelsey just said something about, that Taylor Swift is a talented young woman, and one of the most, or if not most talented woman in the world, type thing globally. First of all, Jason, let me tell you a couple things. First of all, okay, I'm surprised your wife lets you say that and get away with it, right? Because your wife had 3 daughters. She's now raising those 3 daughters with you, right? But let me tell you something. Those daughters are going to come to her. They're going to look at her as the emulation. They're going to look at Taylor Swift. But I'll tell you something. Taylor Swift doesn't mother your kids. Taylor Swift will never mother your kids. This is what it's all about. My mother was more important to me than anybody else from the standpoint of any woman. Your mother should be very important to you, Jason, and Travis, because she's the one who had to put up with your freaking hijinks. I'm sure there was probably broken furniture everywhere from the standpoint, of her trying to figure out 2 big guys, and trying to figure out how to keep you guys busy without ripping each other's heads off. Okay, I know I got 2 brothers, right? So the bottom line is this: is that before you make a statement like that, think about, just put your brain in gear a little bit before your mouth. And I'll tell you something, if you weren't busted on that by your wife, I'm very surprised. And that means your wife must really love you and understand why you say things like that without really thinking about what you're saying. A lot of young women out there, a lot of them, have much, much, much more talent than Taylor Swift. Tons more talent. They're out there as single mothers. They're out there busting their hiney, doing what they need to do to be able to make things work. And I'll tell you something, and they do, and they make it work every day. And for that, they should be the person of the year. I've never seen a person of the year from Time Magazine that says mom. And that's really what Time Magazine needs to have as person of the year. Mom, mother. This is what it's about, Time Magazine. Not Taylor Swift and not person of the year horse poop. It's about your mother, because your mother is the most important woman in your life, period. I just went over time. But that's my opinion. And I highly recommend that people have that, have their own opinions, and I'm okay with that. And just, understand that it's all about having opinions and be able to make that work. Jason, you got your opinion. I don't agree with it, but you can have it if you want it. And you all make sure you have that worldview. See you next time.